Hello, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm so glad you're here. If you're settling into bed, curling up on the couch, or just trying to wind down after a long day of being a human, you've come to the right place. This is a quiet little corner of the internet where science gets soft-spoken and curiosity puts on pajamas. Tonight, we're diving into the dreamy depths of the mind, exploring what science knows so far about dreams and the sleeping brain. It's a journey filled with strange stories your mind tells while you're out cold, brainwaves that look like abstract art, and a few surprises that may just change how you think about sleep. Now, I do hope this video isn't so interesting that it keeps you awake. But hey, if it does, at least you'll be learning something. A fair trade, I'd say. Before we begin, if you enjoy these slow science journeys and you'd like to help this sleepy little channel grow, I'd be ever so grateful if you tapped the like button, subscribed, or even just left a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the night. All right, take a deep breath, settle in. Let's begin our quiet voyage into the theatre of the dreaming mind. What exactly is a dream? It sounds like such a simple question, doesn't it? But defining a dream is a bit like trying to hug a cloud. You can kind of get around it, but it slips through your arms before you can hold on to anything solid. At its core, a dream is a series of thoughts, images, emotions, and sensations that your mind creates while you sleep. It's the original streaming service, beamed straight from your brain's production studio. Sometimes dramatic, sometimes absurd, occasionally terrifying, and more often than not, completely nonsensical. And yet, despite their surreal qualities, dreams feel real while they're happening. You might fly, fall, argue with a walrus in a tuxedo, or show up late to your high school exams despite having graduated 10 years ago. And during the dream, you're convinced it all makes perfect sense. But why does your brain do this? Let's go back, way back, to the ancient days, when people didn't have neuroscience or sleep labs, but they did have dreams. In ancient Mesopotamia, dreams were considered messages from the gods. Egyptians even had professional dream interpreters, like sleep-time oracles. If you dreamt of a cat, a flood, or a flying crocodile, someone probably had a scroll for that. Fast forward to ancient Greece, and philosophers like Aristotle got in on the action. He was one of the first to suggest that dreams might actually come from within the dreamer, from the body and the mind rather than divine sources. Still, the idea that dreams had special meaning stuck around for centuries. Then came the 19th and early 20th centuries, and with them, Sigmund Freud, the man who made dreams fashionable again. Freud believed dreams were the royal road to the unconscious, and that they revealed hidden desires, fears, and forbidden wishes. Which was all very dramatic, and probably not entirely accurate, but it did inspire a lot of armchair analysis and at least a few awkward conversations. Carl Jung, Freud's former protege, took a slightly different route, believing that dreams connected us to a shared human experience, what he called the collective unconscious. Symbols in dreams, according to Jung, had deep archetypal meaning that transcended individual life stories. But here's where science taps the shoulder of philosophy and says, mind if I take a look? Modern neuroscience takes a more grounded approach. Instead of assuming your dreams are hiding deep secrets about your mother, Freud, researchers now study the brain's activity during sleep. And what they've found is that dreams are closely linked to specific sleep stages, most notably REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and during this stage your brain is surprisingly active, sometimes almost as active as when you're awake. Your eyes dart around beneath your eyelids, your heart rate rises a little, and your body becomes temporarily paralyzed, which is probably for the best, or else you'd be acting out your dreams on your pillow. Dreams can occur in other stages of sleep too, what we call non-REM sleep, but these tend to be more abstract, less vivid, and generally more meh. The wild cinematic dreams, the ones with talking giraffes and dramatic plot twists. Those are usually courtesy of REM. But here's where it gets tricky. Scientists still don't entirely agree on why we dream. Is it purely biological? Is it your brain defragmenting itself like an old hard drive? Or is it still whispering symbolic messages in a language we haven't quite cracked? To add to the mystery, not everyone dreams the same way, and some people claim not to dream at all, though more often it's just a matter of not remembering them. Dreams are notoriously slippery when it comes to memory. You might wake up with a perfect recollection of a dream involving a space opera starring your pet hamster, only for it to evaporate like mist by the time you finish brushing your teeth. So if you've ever been frustrated trying to recall a dream, don't worry, you're in good company. The brain doesn't store dream memories the way it stores other memories. In fact, the very regions of the brain responsible for encoding memories, like the hippocampus, are not as active during REM sleep, which is probably why our dream memories tend to fade faster than a Snapchat. Still, some dreams do stick with us. The vivid ones, the scary ones, the emotionally powerful ones. Those tend to burn a bit brighter in the mental archive. Now here's a fun little twist. Researchers have found that the content of dreams often reflects what's going on in your waking life. It's called the continuity hypothesis. The idea that your daily experiences, emotions, and even media consumption sneak their way into your dreams. So if you binge-watched 5 episodes of a detective series, had an argument with your boss, and ate spicy noodles before bed, don't be surprised if your dreams involve a chili-fueled crime scene. Of course, dreams aren't just about daily leftovers. They can also be wildly creative. Many artists, musicians, and inventors have claimed that dreams inspired their work. Paul McCartney famously heard the melody for Yesterday in a dream. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Dreamborn, and the periodic table. Dmitri Mendeleev said it came to him in a vision during sleep. So while dreams may be strange, they're also a space where the mind lets loose. Without the rules of logic or physics, your brain can experiment, rehearse, fantasize and reflect, all without you lifting a finger. It's a bit like going to the movies, except the scriptwriter, director, set designer, and cast are all you. And none of them know what they're doing. But that's part of the magic. Dreams are messy, mysterious, and profoundly human. They're the quiet proof that, even while we rest, the mind is anything but still. So the next time you drift off, remember, you're about to star in your very own midnight adventure. Improvised, unfiltered, and possibly featuring a talking penguin. Sleep tight. Let's talk about sleep, the backstage crew that makes your dreams possible. We often think of sleep as one long, uninterrupted snooze, like pressing pause on consciousness for 8 hours. But under the hood, sleep is surprisingly complex. A well-orchestrated cycle, more like a symphony than a simple off switch. It has stages, patterns, rhythms, and structure. Scientists even call it sleep architecture, which makes it sound very impressive and slightly expensive. So let's take a quiet stroll through the blueprint of sleep. No hard hats needed. Sleep is divided into 2 major categories: REM sleep and non-REM sleep. And non-REM sleep itself has 3 stages, helpfully labeled N1, N2, and N3, which sound like droids from Star Wars, but are actually just different depths of unconsciousness. These stages cycle through roughly every 90 minutes. Think of it like a looped playlist that your brain keeps replaying throughout the night, except with fewer commercials and slightly more drool. Stage N1, the gentle descent. This is the lightest stage of sleep, the moment when you're just beginning to drift off. You're still aware of the world around you, kind of, but your brain has started to shift gears. You might feel your limbs twitch or suddenly jerk awake from a sensation of falling. Don't worry, that's not your soul leaving your body. It's just your nervous system glitching a bit on the way down. Brainwaves in this stage start to slow from active beta and alpha waves into slower theta waves. It's the twilight zone between waking and dreaming. If someone wakes you up during N1, you might insist you weren't asleep at all, which is technically true and also slightly delusional. Stage N2, light sleep. Now you're sinking deeper. Your body temperature drops a bit, your heartbeat slows, and your eye movements stop. This is where your brain gets a little more serious about sleep. You're not quite dreaming yet, but you're definitely not taking calls. In this stage, the brain starts showing little bursts of electrical activity called sleep spindles and K-complexes. These names sound like indie rock bands, but they're actually protective mechanisms that help keep you asleep by blocking out external stimuli. That car horn outside, your brain just gave it a gentle shush with a well-timed spindle. You'll spend about half your night in this stage. It's the workhorse of sleep. Not too flashy, but incredibly important for maintaining rest. Stage N3, deep sleep. Also known as slow wave sleep or delta sleep, this is the big one. The restorative phase, the deep clean cycle on your brain's dishwasher. In N3, your brain produces slow delta waves, huge, lumbering pulses of activity that wash through your cortex like waves lapping a beach. This is when your body repairs tissues, builds bone and muscle, and strengthens the immune system. If you're a growing child, your body releases growth hormone here too. Adults don't get taller, unfortunately, but we do still get the benefits of this cellular spring cleaning. It's very difficult to wake someone from deep sleep, and if you do, they'll likely be groggy, disoriented, and a little annoyed, like someone being yanked out of a very warm bath by a foghorn. Dreaming can happen in this stage, but it's usually not the vivid kind, more like static-laced flashes of thought, emotional tone, or vague impressions. The real movie magic happens next. REM sleep, the dream factory. Welcome to REM sleep, rapid eye movement. This is the mysterious realm where the brain lights up, your muscles go limp, and your eyes dart around beneath your closed lids as if they're watching an invisible tennis match. REM is where the bulk of your most vivid and bizarre dreams happen. It's the brain's sandbox, a place for strange stories, illogical logic, and the occasional celebrity cameo. But REM isn't just entertaining. It also plays a vital role in memory consolidation, emotional processing, and creativity. Some researchers even believe that REM sleep helps you sort through the emotional messiness of the day, like sweeping up confetti after a particularly wild parade. Here's the strange part. During REM, your brain is incredibly active, sometimes just as active as when you're awake. But your body, completely still. In fact, you experience a kind of temporary paralysis called REM atonia, which prevents you from acting out your dreams. It's a safety feature. Your brain says, let's imagine you're being chased by a giant jelly bean, and your body responds, cool, I'll just lie here completely motionless. Each REM phase gets longer as the night progresses. The first cycle might be only 10 minutes long, but by morning it can stretch to an hour. That's why dreams feel longer, weirder, and more vivid as the night goes on. The full sleep cycle. So putting it all together, your brain starts in light sleep, N1, drifts into N2, sinks into N3 for some heavy-duty repair work, and then pops into REM for a bit of late-night theatre. Then it starts over again. This full cycle lasts about 90 minutes, and you repeat it 4 to 6 times per night. But the proportions shift. Early in the night, you get more deep sleep. Later, you get more REM. It's as if your brain schedules maintenance work first, then settles in for some entertainment. Why the architecture matters. Now, why does any of this matter? Because when sleep architecture is disrupted by stress, caffeine, blue light, or that late-night existential crisis, it messes with everything else. You might not reach deep sleep, or your REM might be cut short. The result? You wake up feeling groggy, unrefreshed, and mildly betrayed by your own biology. Sleep isn't just one thing, it's a carefully balanced rhythm with each stage doing its part. And understanding this rhythm can help you get better rest. You don't need to become a sleep technician, but respecting the architecture, keeping a steady sleep schedule, reducing light before bed, avoiding caffeine too late, helps your brain do what it does best, quietly, efficiently, and without waking you up to brag about it. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, your brain is about to launch into a beautifully choreographed routine, complete with waves, spindles, and dream sequences. You may not remember all of it, but your body and your mind will thank you. Why do we dream? It's a question that's haunted philosophers, scientists, and sleepy poets for centuries. And despite all our fancy technology and late-night pondering, the truth is, we still don't know for sure. Dreams remain one of the last truly mysterious frontiers of the human experience, a nightly detour into stories our brains insist on telling, without scripts, logic, or even basic continuity. Some dreams feel deeply meaningful, others are just odd. One moment you're back in school, the next you're being chased through a supermarket by a giant duck wearing roller skates. Why? What purpose could that possibly serve? And yet your brain went to the trouble of creating it. Sounds, visuals, emotions, the whole production, all while you were unconscious. Many scientists believe dreams are linked to memory. During the day, your brain collects an avalanche of information: faces, facts, conversations, disappointments, lunch menus, and stray TikTok jingles. At night, it needs to sort through all that mental clutter. According to the memory consolidation theory, dreams are part of this cleanup job, a kind of mental filing system. Your brain decides what to keep, what to toss, and what to send to that mysterious place where lost socks and forgotten passwords go. Interestingly, students who study intensely or learn a new skill tend to have more REM sleep afterward, and sometimes even dream about what they've been studying. So yes, technically cramming in your sleep is real, though your dream self might confuse calculus with cartoon animals. Another possibility is that dreams help us process emotions. During REM sleep, the brain behaves in a fascinating way. Emotional centers like the amygdala light up, while stress-related chemicals simmer down. This combination allows your mind to revisit emotionally charged memories without the full weight of panic or fear. It's like having a therapist in your head who's willing to role-play your awkward interactions, but with more surreal scenery. That dream you had where you were calmly arguing with your ex on top of a slow-moving elephant, that might have been your brain's way of saying, "Hey, I'm working through it." There's also the idea that dreams are a kind of threat simulator. According to this theory, dreaming is our evolutionary brain's way of preparing us for real-life dangers. By running through imaginary scenarios, being chased, lost, attacked, or late for a test you didn't study for in a class you never attended, your brain practices how it might respond to high-stakes situations. It's rehearsal, essentially. Slightly unhinged, wildly exaggerated rehearsal. And people who grow up in more dangerous environments often have more frequent, vivid dreams, as if their minds are staying on high alert even during sleep. So when your dream drops you into a collapsing building while trying to recite the alphabet backwards, it may just be your primal instincts doing a late-night fire drill. Not all theories are emotional or evolutionary. One of the more mechanical explanations is something called the activation synthesis hypothesis. This view holds that dreams are basically the result of random electrical impulses in the brainstem during REM sleep. These impulses trigger images, memories, and feelings. And your cerebral cortex, the brain's storyteller-in-chief, tries to piece it all together into something coherent. It doesn't always succeed. Hence the talking ducks and the sudden appearance of your third-grade teacher on a pirate ship. Dreams, in this view, aren't purposeful narratives. They're your brain making the best of a very strange and spontaneous situation. There's also the theory that dreaming helps with cognitive development, particularly in children. Kids dream a lot more than adults, and their dreams are often more imaginative and bizarre. Talking animals, magical powers, flying, transforming, building strange new worlds. It's like a Pixar movie every night. Some researchers believe this imaginative dream activity helps the developing brain stretch its problem-solving muscles and emotional awareness. So when your child tells you they fought a dragon made of spaghetti to rescue a cloud, they're not just being silly, they're growing new pathways in their mind. Even for adults, dreaming may play a role in creativity and problem-solving. Have you ever gone to bed stuck on a problem and woken up with a sudden, elegant solution? That's not magic. That's your brain quietly working the night shift, free from distractions and logic. Famous examples include Paul McCartney dreaming up the melody to Yesterday, and the chemist August Kekulé dreaming of a snake biting its own tail, leading him to the structure of the benzene molecule. Dreams let the mind wander down paths it might never consider when fully awake. They free us from rules, and sometimes that freedom leads to insight. And yet, despite all these theories, emotional processing, memory sorting, threat rehearsal, dream synthesis, problem solving, no single explanation has won the day. It's very likely that dreaming serves multiple purposes all at once. Like a late-night variety show where your brain juggles cleaning house, solving puzzles, rehearsing survival scenarios, and throwing in the occasional musical number just for fun. That's the strange beauty of dreaming. It's not tidy, it's not always rational, but it's undeniably human. Every night, your brain spins stories for an audience of one, stories you rarely remember, but that somehow shape your emotions, your memories, and maybe even your imagination. So the next time you drift into that quiet dream world, just remember, your brain isn't being lazy. It's working in the background, sorting, processing, imagining. And if it decides to do all that while turning your uncle into a talking cactus, well, that's just part of the process. Sleep well. You've got a mind full of dreams ahead. Have you ever wondered what part of your brain is responsible for that dream where you were trying to take an exam in a swimming pool filled with marshmallows? Or why your dreams are sometimes filled with intense emotion, while other times they feel like barely coherent montages of leftover thoughts? The answer lies not in just one part of the brain, but in a delicate, nocturnal dance among several regions, each with its own role to play in the theatre of the dreaming mind. Let's start with the prefrontal cortex. By day, it's the responsible adult in the room, the logical thinker, the planner, the internal voice that says, maybe don't send that email in all caps. It's heavily involved in decision-making, rational thought, and impulse control. But when you fall asleep, especially during REM sleep, this part of your brain takes a little nap of its own. It quiets down, steps aside, and lets the rest of the brain take the stage. The result? Dreams that are illogical, boundary-pushing, and often completely bonkers. Without the prefrontal cortex overseeing things, the brain is free to combine ideas and images in the most unfiltered, uninhibited way possible. It's like your inner editor has left the room and now the art department is running wild. Meanwhile, other areas are lighting up with activity. The amygdala, for example, becomes particularly active during REM sleep. This almond-shaped little region deep in the brain is responsible for processing emotions, especially fear, anger, and pleasure. So when you find yourself trapped in a dream where you're being chased through an airport by someone dressed as your childhood pet, you can thank your amygdala for dialing up the emotional intensity. It's the part of the brain that makes dreams feel important, even when the plot makes zero sense. And because your brain's stress response systems are dialed down during REM, you can re-experience intense emotions in a relatively low-stakes environment. In other words, you might feel afraid or thrilled in a dream, but without the heart-racing panic of real danger. Then there's the hippocampus, your brain's librarian, responsible for creating and organizing memories. It's closely linked with dreaming too, especially when dreams incorporate real places or familiar faces. The hippocampus helps retrieve the raw materials your dreams use, the restaurant you passed earlier in the day, the song that got stuck in your head, your second-grade teacher who inexplicably reappears in a dream as a karate champion. But the hippocampus isn't fully online during REM sleep, which may be why dream memories tend to be disjointed and hard to recall. You might remember the mood of the dream or a particular image, but often the details slip away the moment you wake up. The filing cabinet is open, but the lights are dim. Another intriguing player is the occipital lobe, located at the back of the brain, your primary visual processing center. During REM sleep, the occipital lobe shows significant activity, which makes perfect sense given how visual dreams often are. Even people who are born blind report vivid sensory dreams, often focusing on sound, touch, and spatial awareness. For the rest of us, dreams are like mini-movies, full of shifting landscapes, strange lighting, and unexpected camera angles. It's your brain's very own film studio, operating entirely without eyes. And then we have something called PGO waves, short for ponto-geniculo-occipital waves. These bursts of neural activity originate in the pons, part of the brainstem, then move through the lateral geniculate nucleus, involved in visual processing, and finally reach the occipital cortex. It's believed that PGO waves play a key role in initiating REM sleep, and perhaps even in the formation of dream imagery. Some researchers think of them as the opening act of the dream sequence, like someone dimming the lights and drawing the curtain back before the performance begins. One of the most fascinating things about dreaming is how the brain manages to become both highly active and strangely disconnected at the same time. During REM, there's a noticeable decrease in the activity of the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part that helps us recognize reality and make judgments. This helps explain why your dream self thinks it's totally reasonable to be having a tea party on the moon with a flamingo named Steve. Without the usual systems of logic and realism in place, the dream world becomes wonderfully, or sometimes alarmingly, fluid. It's also worth noting that your motor cortex, the part of your brain that controls movement, is active during dreaming too. Your dream self can run, dance, fly, or flail wildly, but your body doesn't actually move, because another part of your brainstem is doing something very helpful, temporarily paralyzing your muscles. This phenomenon is called REM atonia, and it's what keeps you from acting out your dreams in real life. It's like the brain puts a little do not disturb sign on your muscles, while your dream self explores a world that defies the laws of physics. There are rare cases where this muscle paralysis doesn't function correctly, a condition called REM sleep behavior disorder. People with this condition might physically act out their dreams, sometimes leading to injury. It's a reminder of just how much the brain is juggling while we're asleep, and how precise the orchestration needs to be to keep the show running smoothly, without causing chaos in the real world. So when you lie down to sleep, it's not just a passive state. Deep inside your brain, an entire cast of characters is preparing for a nocturnal performance. The emotion-laden amygdala, the memory-sorting hippocampus, the visual processing occipital lobe, the quieted-down prefrontal cortex, and the motor control center all take part in this strange, fleeting phenomenon we call dreaming. And perhaps the most curious part of all, you, the dreamer, rarely remember the rehearsal, the actors, or the script. You might wake up with a fragment, a feeling, a fleeting image. But behind that tiny sliver of recall was a full-on brain production, rich with emotional color and strange architecture, all stitched together by neurons in the dark. Next time you find yourself in a dream, whether you're flying over cities, having tea with historical figures, or just wandering through a slightly distorted version of your local grocery store, take a moment to marvel. Even if the story makes no sense, the fact that your brain can create a story while unconscious is one of the most mysterious and magnificent things it does. Imagine you're dreaming. You're walking through a vast library made entirely of marshmallows. The librarian is a talking raccoon in spectacles. Everything feels real. Then suddenly, a quiet thought drifts through your mind. Wait a minute. This is a dream. And just like that, the whole dream shifts. You're aware. You're lucid. Lucid dreaming is one of the most fascinating quirks of human consciousness. It's that moment in a dream when you realize you're dreaming, and sometimes you can even control what happens next. You might choose to fly, speak to a long-lost friend, or more realistically, spend the entire dream trying to walk through a wall while getting distracted by the carpet. Still, it's a remarkable experience. Scientists define lucid dreaming as a hybrid state of consciousness, a blend of waking awareness and REM sleep. In this state, the dreamer maintains metacognition or self-awareness, while the brain remains immersed in the immersive world of REM-generated imagery. In simpler terms, your brain is asleep, but a part of you has woken up just enough to realize, this is all in my head. What's going on in the brain when this happens? Well, normally during REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex, the logical decision-making part of your brain, is mostly offline. That's why your dreams are often bizarre and illogical. But in lucid dreams, researchers have observed reactivation in certain areas of the prefrontal cortex, particularly the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is associated with self-awareness and reflection. In fact, brain scans of lucid dreamers show a unique neural signature, a combination of REM sleep brain activity and the kind of coherence you'd normally see when someone is awake and thinking critically. It's like your mind opens one eye and quietly says, "Ah, I see what's happening here." Some lucid dreamers can even signal to researchers from within a dream. In sleep labs, participants trained in lucid dreaming have been able to perform agreed-upon eye movements while dreaming, such as looking left, right, left, which can be detected by external monitoring. This might sound like something from a science fiction novel, but it's real. Dreamers in their beds, eyes closed, bodies still, sending subtle Morse code signals from inside their dreams. It's as close as we've come to real-time communication with the dreaming mind. Now, some people stumble into lucid dreams accidentally. They might be in the middle of a particularly strange or vivid dream and suddenly think, this can't be real, and boom, lucidity dawns. But others actively train themselves to lucid dream. There are a few popular techniques for this. One is the mild technique, mnemonic induction of lucid dreams. This involves waking up after about 5 hours of sleep, focusing on the intention to realize you're dreaming, and repeating a phrase like, "Next time I'm dreaming, I will remember I'm dreaming," as you drift back to sleep. It's like planting a seed of awareness and hoping it blooms while you dream. Then there's the wild technique, wake-initiated lucid dreaming. This is a bit more advanced. The goal is to stay mentally aware while your body falls asleep. If done successfully, you can transition directly from wakefulness into a lucid dream, almost like walking into a different room in your mind. It's not easy, and it can lead to some odd sensations, like sleep paralysis or hypnagogic hallucinations. But for some dreamers, it's a powerful gateway into full control. Another common practice is the reality check. This involves questioning your environment throughout the day. Am I dreaming? By doing this habitually, You increase the chances that you'll ask the same question while dreaming and realize the answer. Some people try to push a finger through their palm or look at a clock twice to see if it changes. These reality tests often fail in dreams in obvious, telltale ways. If you can push your hand through a wall or read a sentence twice and get two different meanings, chances are you're dreaming. So what's the appeal of lucid dreaming? For some, it's simply fun, a chance to explore fantastical worlds, fly, breathe underwater, or visit impossible places. For others, it's therapeutic. People who suffer from chronic nightmares, especially those linked to PTSD, have used lucid dreaming to confront and alter their dreams. Imagine being able to turn and face the monster in your recurring nightmare and say, "You're not real, and this is my dream." For some, that moment of control can be deeply healing. Lucid dreaming is also a playground for creativity. Artists, writers, musicians, and even scientists have explored ideas within lucid dreams. Salvador Dali famously used a form of dream interruption to mine his subconscious for surreal imagery. Filmmaker Christopher Nolan even cited lucid dreaming as an influence on Inception, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. Still, despite the excitement, lucid dreaming isn't something everyone experiences easily. Some people can learn it with practice, while others may go their whole lives without ever realizing they're dreaming. There's no shame in that. Like trying to remember your dreams in the first place, it varies from person to person. And even frequent lucid dreamers often report that their level of control fluctuates. Sometimes they can shape the dream like clay. Other times, they're just slightly more aware while riding the wave. There are also a few caveats. Because lucid dreaming exists at the crossroads between sleep and waking, too much deliberate practice, especially techniques that interrupt sleep cycles, can reduce sleep quality. Like anything else, it's all about balance. Exploring your dreams should enhance your rest, not disrupt it. Think of it as visiting a dream garden, a beautiful place to explore, but one you don't need to tend obsessively every night. Ultimately, lucid dreaming is one of those marvels of the human mind that reminds us just how flexible, strange, and mysterious our consciousness really is. Whether you've had one lucid dream or 100, or none at all, the very fact that the brain can become aware of itself while it's dreaming is an astonishing feat of neural gymnastics. And next time you're dreaming, perhaps floating through a sky of shifting colors or exploring a castle made of glass, who knows? A quiet voice in the back of your mind might whisper, "This isn't real," and you might just smile and take flight. Everyone loves a good dream, floating through clouds, visiting impossible worlds, or stumbling upon a bakery that only sells your favorite childhood dessert. But not all dreams are made of marshmallows and whimsy. Sometimes your sleeping mind turns the lights down, turns the volume up, and delivers something far less comforting: a nightmare. Nightmares are the emotional thunderstorms of our dream life. They jolt us awake, leave our hearts racing, and often stick around like a fog long after morning comes. But what actually causes a nightmare? And why does your brain, of all things, seem to go out of its way to frighten you in your sleep, just when you're trying to relax? Let's start with the basics. A nightmare is a vivid, disturbing dream that typically occurs during REM sleep, the same stage responsible for most of your cinematic, story-like dreams. The big difference is emotional tone. While your usual REM dream might be bizarre or confusing, a nightmare ramps up the intensity, often triggering fear, anxiety, sadness, or even shame. You might dream of falling, being chased, getting lost, losing someone you love, or finding yourself woefully unprepared for something important, like standing on stage with no clothes and no idea why you're suddenly holding a goldfish. Most people experience nightmares from time to time, and they're perfectly normal, if a little unsettling. But when nightmares become frequent or recurring, they can start to interfere with sleep quality, emotional well-being, and even waking life. This is known as nightmare disorder, and it's more common than you might think, especially in people with high stress, anxiety, or trauma histories. There's a strong link between nightmares and real-life emotional experiences. In fact, some researchers believe that nightmares serve a similar purpose to regular dreams, helping the brain process difficult emotions, but they do so with a kind of high-voltage intensity. Think of it like your mind running simulations of worst-case scenarios, trying to prepare you emotionally for danger or distress. In this sense, nightmares might actually be protective, a psychological fire drill, if you will, a very unpleasant one, but potentially useful. And for people recovering from trauma, nightmares often replay the event itself in some way, whether literally or symbolically. This is especially true for those with PTSD. Nightmares can become stuck loops, forcing the dreamer to relive painful moments night after night. This is where treatments like imagery rehearsal therapy come in. It's a technique that involves mentally rewriting the nightmare during waking hours, changing the story to something less frightening, and rehearsing the new version repeatedly. Over time, this can reduce the frequency and intensity of the nightmares. It's a way of telling your brain, "We've learned what we needed to. You can let this go now." But not all scary sleep experiences are nightmares. There's another, lesser-known category: night terrors. Night terrors, also called sleep terrors, are a different beast altogether. They usually occur during non-REM deep sleep, particularly in the early part of the night. And unlike nightmares, which are vivid and dreamlike, night terrors are more like sudden panic storms erupting from the brainstem. During a night terror, a person might sit bolt upright, scream, thrash, sweat, or appear wide-eyed with fear, but they're not fully awake. Their eyes might be open, but they're unreachable, like a phone call with no one on the other end. Often, they'll have no memory of the event the next morning. Night terrors are much more common in children than adults, and most kids eventually outgrow them. For parents, they can be distressing to witness, but they're generally harmless and not linked to long-term psychological issues. Still, no one enjoys seeing a child suddenly scream into the void at 2 a.m., especially if all you did was tuck them in with a bedtime story about friendly woodland creatures. In adults, night terrors are rarer, but they can be associated with sleep disorders, stress, or certain medications. They're not technically dreams at all, more like a misfire between sleep states, where the brain gets stuck halfway between deep sleep and wakefulness. It's like your body and mind are playing tug-of-war with the switch marked consciousness. Then there's the eerie cousin of nightmares and night terrors, sleep paralysis. It happens when your mind wakes up before your body does. You're conscious, but you can't move. Often this state is accompanied by hallucinations, shadows in the room, pressure on the chest, strange sounds. Historically, these episodes were blamed on demons, witches, or malevolent spirits. Today, we know it's a natural glitch in the REM sleep system, where the muscle paralysis meant to protect you during dreams lingers a little too long after waking. Despite the terrifying sensation, sleep paralysis is harmless. It usually passes within seconds or minutes, but in the moment, it can feel like being trapped in your own body, a waking nightmare, quite literally. So why does the brain have such a talent for scaring itself? One theory is that negative emotions are simply more memorable, and evolution has a stake in remembering potential dangers. You're far more likely to remember a dream about escaping a forest fire than one about eating a nice sandwich. The emotional charge helps cement the dream in your memory and makes you more likely to learn from it. From a survival perspective, fear is a powerful teacher, but the line between dream and nightmare isn't always clear. Some dreams are thrilling but not frightening, while others are deeply unsettling without being loud or dramatic. The emotional tone is subjective, and what haunts one person might amuse another. A dream about public speaking might terrify someone with stage fright, while someone else might enjoy the spotlight, even in dreamland. Nightmares can also serve as a strange kind of mirror, reflecting our deepest fears, stresses, and unresolved conflicts. They show us what's under the surface, the worries we haven't voiced, the stress we haven't fully processed. And while that can be uncomfortable, it can also be a step toward healing. Like your brain is saying, look, I know this is scary, but we need to talk about it. The good news is that most people don't have nightmares every night. They're occasional visitors. Intense, yes, but usually fleeting. And for those who do experience them more often, there are tools to help. From sleep hygiene and stress management to therapy and targeted dream techniques, we've learned ways to make peace with the shadows in the dream world. So if you've had a nightmare recently, a chase, a fall, a moment of helplessness, know that your brain might just be trying to work something out. And if you woke up, heart racing, a little shaken but safe in your bed, well, that's your brain's way of reminding you it was only a dream. And maybe, just maybe, the next one will feature something gentler, like a nap on a floating leaf, or a conversation with a wise old turtle. Either way, you'll be okay. We often think of sleep as a time to rest, to recharge, to gently escape the world for a while. But your dreams don't always get the memo. They don't politely ask if now's a good time to unpack unresolved emotions. They just barge in, wearing symbolic disguises, rearranging your memories, and occasionally throwing in a nonsensical subplot involving cats and elevators. It turns out, dreams and mental health are closely linked. Like two dancers moving through the night, each influences the other, often in subtle, unexpected ways. Sometimes dreams reflect our emotional state. Other times, they amplify it, and in some cases, they might even be trying to help us heal. Let's start with the obvious. When you're stressed, anxious, or emotionally overwhelmed, your dreams tend to get louder. Not literally, unless you dream in surround sound, but louder in content. They become more vivid, more emotional, sometimes more chaotic. You might dream about being chased, lost, unprepared, or frozen in place. These dreams can mirror the emotional turbulence in your waking life, like an abstract art version of your inner state. Researchers have long observed this connection. People with depression, for example, often report more negative dream content. Their dreams may feel heavy, repetitive, or emotionally flat, mirroring the numbness or sadness they experience while awake. Anxiety disorders, on the other hand, tend to show up as dreams filled with threat, pressure, or social embarrassment, like giving a speech with no pants or trying to dial a phone number that never works. But the connection runs deeper than just content. The structure of dreams, how fragmented or coherent they are, can also shift with mental health. People going through intense stress or psychological trauma often experience more fragmented, jarring dreams. It's as if the brain is trying to process too much, too quickly, without enough glue to hold the pieces together. The result is a kind of dream chaos, full of emotional weight but lacking narrative clarity. This is particularly true in post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Nightmares are one of the hallmark symptoms. These aren't just bad dreams. They're often reliving the traumatic event itself, over and over. And while REM sleep is usually a helpful, adaptive space for emotional processing, in PTSD, that system seems to break down. Instead of soothing the wound, the dream repeats it, like a stuck record. Interestingly, not all REM is equal. In healthy individuals, REM sleep tends to reduce the emotional sting of difficult memories. You can still recall the event, but it no longer carries the same emotional voltage. But in people with trauma, that desensitization process doesn't seem to work properly. The dream becomes more of a re-traumatization than a release. This is why therapies aimed at dreaming, like imagery rehearsal therapy, which we touched on earlier, can be so powerful. By rewriting the script of a recurring nightmare while awake and rehearsing the new version, people can gradually change the content of their dreams and reduce their emotional intensity. It's a bit like giving the brain a new play to perform, one with less terror and more resolution. But dreaming isn't just affected by mental health, it can also be shaped by the tools we use to manage it. Take antidepressants, for instance. Many medications that affect serotonin and norepinephrine, two key brain chemicals involved in mood, also affect sleep. Some suppress REM sleep altogether, leading to fewer remembered dreams. Others cause REM rebound when the dosage is adjusted, meaning you might suddenly experience very vivid, emotionally intense dreams. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, just a reflection of how interconnected mood, sleep, and dreaming truly are. Your brain is a system, after all, not a set of separate compartments. Change one part, and the ripple travels everywhere. There's also growing interest in using dreams as a window into mental health. While we're still far from using dreams as diagnostic tools, researchers are exploring how dream content might help detect shifts in emotional well-being, especially when combined with sleep patterns and other cognitive markers. The future may hold AI models trained to detect early signs of depression or anxiety based on dream descriptions. Though let's be honest, explaining a dream about flying broccoli to a robot may always feel slightly absurd. What's clear, though, is that dreams are deeply personal. They can reveal emotional truths we haven't said out loud. They can reflect our hopes, our fears, and the tangled middle ground where those two live side by side. And sometimes, when the world feels overwhelming, dreams can offer a kind of symbolic relief, giving shape to things we haven't yet found words for. There's even evidence that dreams might be helpful in problem-solving and emotional growth. In therapy, clients will sometimes dream about difficult decisions or unresolved feelings. And while the dream doesn't hand them a perfectly wrapped answer, it often nudges them closer to clarity. It's the brain's way of quietly saying, "You're working on this, even if you don't realize it." Of course, not all dreams are so profound. Some are just weird, disjointed, or clearly inspired by too much late-night snacking, and that's okay too. Not every dream needs to be meaningful. Sometimes a floating platypus in a bow tie is just a floating platypus in a bow tie. But when dreams do stir something deeper, when they echo the stress you've been ignoring or surface a fear you haven't quite faced, it's worth pausing to notice. Not overanalyze, not panic, just notice. Because your dreaming mind isn't separate from you. It's part of you. A nighttime version of yourself trying, in its own strange language, to be understood. So if you're going through a hard time and your dreams are darker, stranger, or more intense, be gentle with yourself. Your mind is still processing, still working, even in the dark. And if your dreams are softer, kinder, or quietly hopeful, hold on to that too. Sometimes the subconscious leads us toward healing before we're even awake enough to see it. In the end, dreams are not just mental noise. They're part of the conversation, the ongoing dialogue between your brain, your body, and your heart. And like all good conversations, sometimes the most important parts happen late at night, when everything else is still. You've probably seen it before. A dog sleeping soundly on the floor, paws twitching, tail flicking, maybe even letting out a muffled bark or two. Or a cat stretched out on a windowsill, whiskers twitching, legs paddling as if it's chasing something in its sleep. And if you've ever wondered whether animals dream, the answer is probably yes. Of course, they can't tell us about it. No golden retriever has sat down to describe their dream about a field of flying tennis balls. But science has given us a few clues, and the evidence is pretty convincing. Let's start with the basics. Almost all mammals and many birds experience REM sleep, the same phase of sleep in which humans do most of their dreaming. REM, or rapid eye movement, is characterized by irregular brain activity, temporary muscle paralysis, and yes, darting eye movements under closed eyelids. In animals, this looks very familiar. You'll often see the twitching, the flickering eyes, the occasional sleep bark or meow. It's like a silent movie playing behind their eyelids. But brain scans offer even stronger evidence. In a now famous study at MIT, researchers trained rats to run through a maze while their brain activity was recorded. Specific patterns of neurons would fire as the rats moved through the maze, sort of like a song their brains played while solving the puzzle. Later, while the rats slept, researchers observed those exact same neural patterns replaying during REM sleep. It was as if the rats were dreaming about the maze, running it again in their minds, perhaps reinforcing the memory or mentally practicing for the next day's challenge. The same song was playing, only now the lights were off. Birds too show signs of dreaming. Zebra finches, for example, have been studied for their complex singing behavior. When they sleep, their brains replay the neural patterns used in singing, almost as if they're rehearsing their songs while unconscious. Dream karaoke, if you will. But it's not just mammals and birds. Recent studies suggest that even reptiles, long thought to be too simple for REM, might have a kind of dreamlike sleep as well. Certain species of lizards exhibit sleep cycles with activity resembling both REM and non-REM sleep. It's still early days in this area of research, but it raises a fascinating possibility. Dreaming might be a much older evolutionary trait than we once believed. In fact, the further we look, the more we see a kind of dreaming continuum. Animals with more complex brains and emotional lives tend to show more obvious signs of REM sleep. Dolphins, for example, have a strange sleep pattern where only one hemisphere of the brain sleeps at a time, which complicates dreaming but doesn't rule it out. Elephants have been recorded showing REM sleep while lying down, and primates, our close evolutionary cousins, dream in ways that closely resemble our own. So what are animals actually dreaming about? That's the big mystery. While we can observe neural patterns and behaviors, we can't ask a cat, did you dream about hunting? Or a squirrel, were you in a tiny nut-themed amusement park? But we can make some reasonable guesses. Animals probably dream about things that matter to them, navigating their territory, social bonding, hunting, playing, eating. The content may not be symbolic or metaphorical like human dreams sometimes are, no existential angst or surreal metaphors, but they're likely grounded in experience. In this way, dreaming might serve similar functions across species: memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and behavioral rehearsal. For a mouse, dreaming might reinforce how to find its way through a maze. For a dog, it might be a replay of a walk in the park or a bark-off with the neighbor's poodle. For a horse, maybe it's galloping across a field that exists only in its mind. There's even some evidence that animals can experience nightmares. Lab rats exposed to stress show different patterns of REM sleep, sometimes fragmented, sometimes more intense. And they may avoid parts of the maze they explored in a previous, unpleasant dream. This suggests that just like us, animals use dreams to process difficult or frightening experiences, which is a bit heartbreaking to imagine, but also a reminder that dreaming is deeply tied to the emotional life of the brain. And what about our pets? The dogs curled up at our feet, the cats softly snoring on the windowsill. What's going on behind those sleepy eyes? Researchers believe that dogs, in particular, have vivid dreams. Smaller dogs like poodles or dachshunds tend to enter REM sleep more frequently, while larger breeds may stay in REM longer. And while we can't know the content, it's very likely that your dog dreams about you, their human companion, because you're such a central part of their life. Cats are a bit more mysterious, of course, but they dream too. In fact, studies on cats in the 1960s helped scientists first understand the connection between REM sleep and dreaming. When researchers temporarily disabled the part of the brain that causes REM paralysis, cats would act out their dreams, stalking, pouncing, even grooming, all while fast asleep. It was the first real demonstration that animals don't just sleep, they live whole stories in their minds while doing so. Dreaming in animals also raises fascinating philosophical questions. If a rat dreams, does it have a sense of self in that dream? Do animals distinguish between the real and the imagined? And most intriguingly, what would a dream feel like to a creature that can't describe it in words? Maybe, just maybe, dreaming is one of those universal brain languages. A way for all creatures, great and small, to replay, remember, and reflect. Maybe it's not uniquely human after all, but something woven deep into the fabric of life itself. A nighttime world where instinct and memory meet, soft, silent, and unseen. So next time your dog kicks their legs in their sleep, or your cat chirps quietly into the night, let them be. Let them chase dream birds or bark at dream postmen. They are voyaging too, through inner landscapes you'll never see, but that exist nonetheless, real in the only way dreams ever are. And as you drift off tonight, you might smile knowing you're not alone. Somewhere nearby, another creature is dreaming too. For most of human history, dreams have been private, a world seen by one person alone, fleeting, mysterious, and often forgotten by morning. You might wake up with the fragments of a story in your head, maybe a face, a place, or a peculiar sense of having felt something. But try to explain it to someone else, and the magic slips through your fingers. Dreams, until very recently, were like whispers in a locked room. But now, scientists are picking at the lock. Welcome to the strange and slightly sci-fi frontier of dream recording, where neuroscience, technology, and a touch of wonder collide in an attempt to do what once seemed impossible: read the dreaming mind. It starts, as many brainy things do, with machines and squiggly lines. Researchers have long used EEG, electroencephalography, to monitor brainwaves during sleep. EEG is great for tracking the different stages of sleep, from light sleep to deep sleep and REM, but it doesn't tell you what someone is dreaming about. For that, you need a more detailed picture. That's where fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, comes in. It lets scientists see which parts of the brain are active and when. One of the most fascinating experiments in this area happened in Japan, at the ATR Computational Neuroscience Laboratories. Researchers there asked participants to fall asleep in an fMRI machine, which, let's be honest, is probably the least relaxing sleep environment on Earth. Still, the volunteers managed to nod off, and the team monitored their brain activity during the early stages of sleep, when brief dream imagery begins. Here's the clever bit. Before the experiment, participants had been shown hundreds of images: cats, buildings, people, objects, while awake, and their brain activity was recorded. Each image created a kind of neural fingerprint, a pattern of activity in the visual cortex. Then, during sleep, when similar patterns showed up, the researchers could compare them to the waking data. And it worked. With about 60% accuracy, the team could guess what kind of image the person was dreaming about, whether it involved a person, a book, a car, or a tree. They couldn't describe the dream's plot or emotions, but they could identify what was being visualized. It was the first real peek behind the curtain of a sleeping mind. Now, 60% might not sound like a lot, but considering we're talking about guessing thoughts from neural patterns in a sleeping brain, it's remarkable. It was like watching someone's dreams from the outside, albeit in low resolution and without sound. Other experiments have gone further. At the University of California, researchers developed a model to reconstruct what people were seeing while awake, using fMRI data to recreate rough images from brain activity. The reconstructions were fuzzy and surreal, like impressionist paintings from the subconscious, but they offered a glimpse of the possibilities ahead. So can we watch someone's dream on a screen? Not quite, but the groundwork is there. Scientists can identify certain categories of content, track emotional tone based on which brain regions light up, and in some cases, even detect specific objects or shapes. The technology is limited but improving. With advances in AI and neural decoding, dream reading might become sharper, faster, and more accurate in the years to come. Of course, this raises some very big and very ethical questions. Dreams are private by nature. They're one of the last unfiltered expressions of the self, a space where no one else can follow. So if the day comes when we can record or decode dreams with precision, what happens to that privacy? Will we need dream passwords? Will there be legal protections for the content of our subconscious? These questions are no longer purely hypothetical. As neurotechnology advances, ethicists and lawmakers are already discussing the need for what's being called neuro rights. Basic protections for mental privacy, freedom of thought, and the sanctity of the self. Because while it might be fun to imagine sharing your dreams like YouTube videos, there's also something sacred about the fact that dreams are yours and yours alone. That said, there are some potentially beautiful uses for dream recording. Imagine people with communication disorders, those who can't speak, write, or express themselves outwardly. If we could one day translate their dreams into language or images, we might gain access to their inner worlds in a way that's never been possible before. Or consider the therapeutic potential. If a psychologist could see patterns in someone's dreams over time, recurring symbols, emotional arcs, unresolved tensions, it might offer a new tool for understanding mental health. A dream journal powered by your brainwaves. There's even a bit of playfulness in the science. Some researchers are experimenting with what's called targeted dream incubation. This involves playing specific sounds or words during sleep to gently guide the content of a dream. For example, if someone is learning a new language, they might hear vocabulary in their sleep to reinforce memory. Or if they want to dream about, say, flying, they might hear ambient wind sounds or soft cues about the sky. It's not full-blown dream control, but it's a gentle nudge in a chosen direction. Of course, dreams are still far too complex to decode in full. They're messy, layered, emotionally charged, and often absurd. Even the dreamer struggles to make sense of them, let alone someone trying to read them secondhand. But we're getting closer to understanding how the brain builds these inner worlds, and maybe, just maybe, closer to bringing them into the light. So tonight, as you settle into bed, take a moment to appreciate the quiet mystery behind your eyelids. Your brain is about to dive into a world of its own making, unrecorded, unfiltered, and uniquely yours. For now, no machine can follow you there. And maybe that's a good thing, because even in an age of data and decoding, there's something lovely about the idea that some stories remain secret. Whispers in a locked room, painted in the dark. We've wandered through the landscapes of the dreaming mind, from twitching lab rats and philosophical speculations to REM sleep, memory repair, and barking dogs in their sleep. But before we drift toward the end of this quiet journey, there's one last question worth asking. Where is all this going? What does the future hold for dream science? The truth is, we're on the edge of something remarkable. For the first time in human history, our tools are catching up to our questions. Technology, neuroscience, and even artificial intelligence are combining in strange and beautiful ways, offering not just glimpses into the dreaming mind, but the potential to shape it, enhance it, and maybe even share it. For starters, the field of targeted dream incubation, yes, that's a real term, is growing rapidly. The idea is simple. If you give the brain a gentle nudge before or during sleep, you might be able to influence the content of dreams. Not control them completely, of course, but steer them like a canoe on a quiet river. Experiments have already shown that playing specific sounds or words during certain stages of sleep can trigger related dream imagery. People exposed to the scent of roses while sleeping, for instance, are more likely to report pleasant dreams. People who hear a voice saying "tree" might dream of a forest. Subtle cues, carefully timed, can shift the content of a dream without fully waking the sleeper. It's not mind control, it's more like mental gardening. Planting a seed and seeing what grows. Now imagine combining that with wearable sleep tech. Headbands that monitor your brainwaves, or earbuds that deliver cues only during REM. You could one day guide your dreams to help solve problems, rehearse speeches, or gently work through emotional blocks. There are already prototype apps and devices claiming to do just this. The science is still young, but it's no longer science fiction. And speaking of fiction, let's talk about dream sharing. It's one of the oldest fantasies we have, the idea that two people could experience the same dream, or that we could record and play back a dream like a movie. We're nowhere near that yet. But as we discussed earlier, researchers are starting to decode visual dream content using fMRI and machine learning. It's still fuzzy and vague, like watching dreams through frosted glass. But the door has been cracked open. In the future, it's possible we'll be able to turn those dream fragments into rough images, maybe even animations. You could watch a version of your own dream the next morning, or share a surreal dream memory with a friend. Not because it's perfectly accurate, but because it captures something of the tone, the mood, the magic. A dream diary made visible. But even as we peer ahead, there are ethical questions blinking gently in the background. If we can guide dreams, can they be manipulated? If we can read them, could they be misused? What happens when the line between sleep and technology becomes blurry? This is why the idea of neuro rights has started to enter the conversation. Rights to protect mental privacy, autonomy, and the freedom of thought. Because if dreams are the last uncolonized corner of the mind, we should tread carefully, gently, like walking through a sacred space in someone else's house. There are also possibilities for healing. Imagine a future where people with PTSD receive personalized dream therapy, using sound cues or gentle neural stimulation to help reprocess traumatic memories in a safer way, or where children with anxiety are taught how to shape their dreams through guided storylines, turning fears into adventures, or where the elderly, facing memory decline, revisit lost moments in dreams, aided by subtle cues from photos, music, or smells. Lucid dreaming, too, could have a renaissance, not as an escape, but as a tool for emotional growth, creativity, even learning. Some researchers are exploring how lucid dreamers can practice real-life skills in their dreams, like playing an instrument or preparing for a difficult conversation. The brain, after all, doesn't fully distinguish between imagined action and physical rehearsal. If your dream self practices kindness, courage, or compassion, perhaps your waking self benefits too. And then there's AI. Artificial intelligence is being trained not just to analyze brain activity, but to recognize patterns, suggest dream themes, and even build interactive environments that mimic the feel of dreams. Some virtual reality developers are experimenting with dream-inspired environments that respond to emotion, spaces that feel less like games and more like lucid dreams you can explore while awake. It's wild, it's a little strange, and it's just beginning. But for all this dazzling technology, there's something quietly reassuring to remember. Dreaming, at its core, doesn't require gadgets. You don't need an app, a headband, or a lab. Your brain already has everything it needs to dream, to remember, to process, to create, to wander. All you need is sleep, and perhaps a little curiosity, because dreams remind us that the mind is not a machine, it's a storyteller, a traveler, a soft projector in the dark, replaying old scenes and improvising new ones. Sometimes clumsy, sometimes profound, always personal. The future of dream science may bring new tools, new therapies, and new ways to connect. But it will never fully replace the simple wonder of waking up with a strange image in your head, blinking in the early light and thinking, Where did that come from? And maybe that's the heart of it. No matter how far science takes us, dreams will always retain a little mystery, a little poetry, a space where the brain stretches out, curls into itself, and drifts somewhere only it knows how to go. So sleep deeply tonight, dream freely, and know that while science watches from the edge, your mind is still quietly writing its own stories, night after night, behind closed eyes, in the oldest language it knows. And so, here we are, gently gliding back from the strange, beautiful world of dreams. We've tiptoed through REM cycles, wandered the halls of memory, listened to the whispering amygdala, and even peeked, just a little, into the future of dream science. We've seen that dreams aren't just nighttime noise. They're stories your brain tells itself, sometimes clumsy, sometimes profound, always intimate. What we know so far is astonishing, but what we don't know may be even more wondrous. Because for all the brain scans and neural maps, dreams still slip through the cracks of explanation. They remain in many ways the mind's poetry, part science, part soul. So as you drift off tonight, whether your brain takes you on an epic adventure, a quiet memory, or something so bizarre it defies all logic, let it. You don't need to understand every detail. You just need to let go. Your brain knows what it's doing, and if this video has made you just a little too fascinated to fall asleep, well, I apologize, but at least you might have learned something along the way. A fair trade, I hope. Before we part ways, if you enjoyed this slow journey through the sleeping brain, I'd be truly grateful if you gave the video a gentle thumbs up, subscribed to The Sleepy Scientist, or left a comment below. Where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it in your corner of the world? I'd love to know where this little cloud of calm has drifted. Until next time, sleep well, dream freely, and remember, your mind is still writing stories, even in the dark. Good night.